Hello, we're here at Innovista Law, home of the TCPA Defense Force. My name is Ernesto Mendieta.
I'm John Nelson.
And today we're going to talk about the penalties that are a consequence of a violation to the TCPA. John, first let's explain in very broad terms what is a violation of the TCPA.
So, while the TCPA itself is pretty expansive and there's a lot of language in there, essentially what it comes down to is a action by Congress to protect consumers from unwanted phone calls, text messages, and faxes. It's where the do not call list originates, and where all of these separate sections come from.
Okay, so Congress wanted to prevent people getting calls or text messages that they didn't want. Robocalls can get sometimes intrusive.
Sure.
When they come at certain times. So Congress decided you cannot call people unless they have consented to in certain circumstances, right? So what happens if a platform provider or a brand actually contacts these people in violation of the TCPA?
Well, in order for Congress to protect consumers from getting these messages, they needed to create some sort of a deterrent. And they did that by enacting a provision providing for between $500 and up to $1,500 in damages per text message that is sent or phone call made in violation of the TCPA. So damages of between $500 and $1,500 per call or text.
So it's $500 per message or per call, and $1,500 if that violation was done willfully. Correct? So the amounts are incredible. The law is saying that for receiving just one text messages, that implies that you suffered or you had a damage of $500. How can you understand that just one simple message could be valued in $500?
So certainly when we think of damages in our normal tort cases or injury cases we think about people actually being hurt in some way, physically, emotionally, something like that. The way the TCPA is written, it doesn't require a plaintiff to prove any sort of physical or emotional damage in order for that person to make a claim under the TCPA. Essentially what it comes down to is an individual receiving a text message or a phone call through an auto dialer that they did not consent to, and that alone right there is the damage. Nothing more really needs to come into play for them to sue you under the TCPA.
Yeah, so the technical name for this is a strict liability statute, where the court won't care if you do it by mistake, if you were negligent, or what happened is if you sent an unwanted text message to a consumer that did not give consent, that's $500. Whatever was the reason, however that was performed.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else on this part of the damages, or should we move forward with other penalties for the TCPA?
No, I think we can move on to the higher end.
Okay, so as we just summarized, the first part was what happens if an individual consumer, a plaintiff, decides to sue you in court, in federal court. It's $500 or $1,500, but that's not all the remedies that the TCPA have. What other penalties could a company suffer from the TCPA?
Sure. Well, in addition to monetary damages, of course, individuals can ask the court for an injunction against your platform, your marketing campaign, essentially shutting down your marketing operations, which, while not monetarily as damaging to you at the moment as the fines and damages that the TCPA allows, certainly will hurt your brand's recognition and your brand going forward.
Yeah, so an injunction is also terrible for a brand in case they suffer it. Next to the monetary, who can also $500 can be understandable, but then when you're talking about text messages, marketing campaigns, they send thousands of messages,
millions of dollars. Easily.
Yeah, $500 per message skyrockets into millions of dollar lawsuits, and they're real. They happen. We see them constantly in court. There's these class actions by professional plaintiffs that they see the damages there available for them, so they go for it.
Sure, every time.
Okay, we were talking about lawsuits in federal court, but there's also the TCPA option of that gives the federal agencies capacity or ability to prosecute these violations, right?
Correct, yes. Beyond just individual citizens coming after you, states attorneys general also have the right under the TCPA to sue on behalf of a state's constituents.
Okay. Correct, and even the FCC or the FTC could start a process if you're in violation of the TCPA. So it's very important to keep in compliance. It's very important to have an attorney involved during the development, during the campaign, and after in case of litigation, because that violation can be enforced in several different ways. Okay, thank you, John. We're here at Innovista Law, home of the TCPA Defense Force.